The Carthage had never met a wall they couldn't break. For millennia, their empire had swept through the stars, conquering planet after planet with their invincible technology and unrelenting might. Their weapons were capable of disintegrating entire cities. Their warriors were stronger and faster than any species they encountered, and their shield technology, the strongest shield, was an engineering marvel beyond compare. No force, no weapon, and no creature had ever breached it. It was perfect, or so they thought. On the bridge of their flagship, Vorga's Wrath, Commander Kaltak watched the holographic projection of Earth with a smug satisfaction. The blue planet, barely a speck in the vastness of space, was home to what the Carthage considered a primitive, insignificant species, humans. The Carthage had studied them from afar for years. They lacked advanced weapons, and their technology seemed limited to crude physical instruments. The humans weren't even able to leave their own solar system reliably. They were easy prey. "Commander, the fleet is ready," said Triss, his second in command. A towering figure with a deep scar running across his face. Triss radiated the kind of strength that matched the Carthage's reputation. "We will take the planet in hours. Their resistance will be..." Amusing, Kaltak's lips curled into a smile. "Indeed, let's show them the power of the strongest shield." With a single command, the Carthage armada entered orbit around Earth, their ships cloaked in near invisibility, descending from the void like a storm on the horizon. Their shields, those perfect, impenetrable walls of energy, lit up in every corner of the fleet. The humans wouldn't even have time to understand what hit them. As the Carthage prepared for their invasion, humanity's leaders were caught off guard by the sudden appearance of alien ships in their skies. The first news broadcasts were filled with panic and confusion. The Earth Defense Council scrambled, ordering every possible defense to be mobilized. But it was clear the humans had no idea what they were dealing with. In the heart of Earth's defense system, Sergeant Marcus Hale sat hunched over a terminal, analyzing data from the satellite networks. He was a burly man, his face rugged from years of military service, his dark eyes hard from countless skirmishes. His uniform was smeared with oil and dust. He was used to getting his hands dirty, even when it wasn't in the field. His specialty wasn't strategy, nor was it piloting advanced fighter jets. Marcus was an engineer. The screen in front of him flickered, showing a series of readings from the incoming Carthage fleet. His eyes narrowed as he scanned the data. They were powerful. Too powerful, it seemed. Human weapons bounced off their shields without so much as a scratch. He sighed, running a hand through his dark, disheveled hair. It looked like they had no choice but to fight. "Commander Hale," a voice broke into his thoughts. It was Lieutenant Torres, his second in command, standing by the door with a tense expression. "They're waiting for our response. What's the plan?" Marcus glanced back at her, his expression flat. "What can we do? Their shields are too strong. I don't see how we could get through them." Torres crossed her arms. "I heard they're practically invincible." "Yeah," Marcus muttered, "and it's starting to look like they're not going to give us a chance to prove them wrong." The hum of the base's machinery filled the room as Marcus continued to study the data, an uneasy thought nagging at the back of his mind. His mind began working in overdrive, considering every possibility. The Carthage fleet was relying on one thing above all: their shields. If they couldn't be breached, humanity had no chance. But if there was one thing Marcus had learned during his career, it was that no system was perfect, no matter how advanced. "Torres," Marcus said suddenly, his tone sharper, "give me the data on the Carthage shield readings again. I want to see exactly what we're up against." Torres hesitated. "Sir, all we know is that their shields are energy-based. They're holding up against everything we've thrown at them." "That's what I need to confirm," Marcus replied, pointing at the screen, "because I think they're using resonant frequencies. The shields are vibrational in nature. If I can figure out the frequency, we can disrupt them." Torres blinked. "Are you suggesting we hit it with a hammer?" Marcus grinned wryly. "Sometimes the simplest solution is the best one. If we can match their frequency with the right kind of force, it might just work." For a moment, Torres didn't know whether to laugh or worry. "A hammer," she repeated. "That's your plan?" Marcus tapped his fingers on the desk thoughtfully. Maybe not literally a hammer, but I'm not wrong. Everything has a weak point, and I've got a feeling we can find theirs. The idea seemed insane, but Marcus wasn't one for wild schemes. He was the one people went to when everything else failed. If there was a way to break through the Carthage shields, he was going to find it. Even if it meant using an approach that seemed utterly primitive. After all, who said you needed advanced tech to beat advanced tech? All right, Torres said, her face set in determination. What do you need from me? Marcus stood up, a spark of hope flickering in his eyes. Everything. Get me every scrap of Carthage tech we've recovered, and a team of engineers to back me up. If we're going to break that shield, we need to know it inside and out. And so, with that first flicker of a plan, the gears of humanity's resistance started turning. Fueled not by technology alone, but by an unyielding belief that no wall, no matter how perfect, could withstand the ingenuity of the human spirit. The first wave of human resistance failed spectacularly. Carthage ground forces had landed in key locations across the planet, erecting their strongest shield to create impenetrable zones. Cities fell within hours, as humanity's missiles, artillery, and energy-based weapons battered uselessly against walls of shimmering energy. The shields didn't just block attacks. They absorbed and redirected kinetic and thermal forces, rendering Earth's most powerful weapons obsolete. On the battlefield outside what was once the city of Ravenhold, Sergeant Marcus Hale crouched behind the ruins of a collapsed overpass. Around him, soldiers scrambled for cover, their faces streaked with sweat and grime. A massive Carthage shield dome loomed ahead, protecting the enemy's forward outpost. Inside, alien machines worked undisturbed, processing Earth's resources and expanding their foothold. Another volley incoming, someone shouted. Marcus braced himself as a human artillery unit launched another barrage. The shells screamed across the sky and detonated against the alien shield with a hollow thrum. The barrier rippled, faint waves of energy shuddering across its surface, then settled back into perfect, gleaming stillness. Not a scratch. Useless, someone muttered. Marcus gritted his teeth as he watched. He wasn't a soldier in the traditional sense, but he'd seen enough battles to know when things were hopeless. The Carthage shield wasn't just strong, it was arrogant. It radiated an unsettling calm, as if mocking every desperate effort humanity threw at it. Pack it up, Lieutenant Torres barked, motioning to the retreating soldiers. We're pulling back. That shield isn't going anywhere. Marcus didn't move. He just stared at the barrier, brow furrowed. Something wasn't sitting right. Every time a shell struck, he noticed it. A strange vibration in the shield, a pulse that lingered just long enough to feel off. Marcus, let's go, Torres yelled, grabbing his shoulder. Wait, he said sharply, pointing at the barrier. Do you see that? When it gets hit, it ripples. Torres followed his gaze. So what? It's probably just dispersing the force. Energy shields do that. Yeah, but energy shields don't hum, Marcus replied. He pulled a small sensor device from his toolkit, pointing it toward the Carthage dome. The device buzzed softly in his hand. Listen to it. That shield isn't just dispersing energy, it's resonating. Like it's tuned to a specific frequency. Torres frowned. And what does that mean, genius? It means it's not invincible, Marcus said, his mind already racing. If it resonates like a tuning fork, it has a weak point. Hit it hard enough at the right frequency, and you could disrupt it. That's insane, Torres replied, shaking her head. You're talking about brute force, Marcus. We've thrown everything at that shield, and it hasn't so much as flickered. Because we haven't hit it right, Marcus insisted. He smacked the sensor device against his palm, as if trying to emphasize his point. You don't need fancy weapons to break something like this. You just need to find its flaw and hit it where it hurts. Torres studied him for a long moment, her skepticism giving way to reluctant curiosity. All right, let's say you're right. How do we figure out this weak frequency of yours? Marcus stood up, slinging his pack over his shoulder. We test it. Grab me a team and every piece of captured Carthage tech we've got. If there's a crack in that shield, we're going to find it. As the soldiers fell back, Marcus lingered for one last look at the shimmering dome. It still pulsed faintly, vibrating in response to the environment. To the untrained eye, it seemed perfect, unyielding, but Marcus knew better. Nothing was perfect. Everything could break. And when it did, he'd be there with his hammer. Marcus Hale stood in the cavernous underground hangar of the Ravenhold military base, surrounded by tables covered in alien tech, human tools, and hastily scribbled notes. Around him, engineers and scientists worked furiously under flickering lights, testing theories, tweaking machines, and breaking apart scraps of captured Carthid equipment. The air buzzed with tension. Humanity was running out of time. "All right, listen up," Marcus barked, slamming his titanium hammer onto a nearby crate. The sharp clang silenced the room. "We've been up against the Carthid's strongest shield for weeks, and we've gotten nowhere. But I'm telling you, these shields aren't magic, they're systems. And systems can fail." He pointed to a whiteboard where a crude sketch of the Carthid shield shimmered with waveforms and frequency graphs. "We've figured out their shields rely on energy oscillations. They hum literally. That hum is a resonant frequency. If we hit them at the exact pitch and force, the shield destabilizes." An engineer raised a hand. "And when you say hit them, Sergeant, you mean?" Marcus grinned, lifting his hammer onto his shoulder. "I mean, we hit them. Hard." The room buzzed with murmurs of disbelief. Marcus held up his hands. "Look, I know it sounds ridiculous, but we tested it. Small strikes tuned at the right frequency cause disruptions in their shield matrix. Enough hits at scale, enough force, and the whole thing collapses." Torres stepped forward, arms crossed. "So your grand plan to save humanity is hammers?" "Precision hammers," Marcus corrected, holding up a modified device, essentially a heavy kinetic striker enhanced with sensors and frequency modulators. "We've rigged these bad boys to deliver calibrated strikes that resonate with the shield's weak point. Think of it like hitting a crystal glass to make it shatter. Timing and force have to be perfect." "And you really think this will work?" Torres asked. "It already did," Marcus said, gesturing to the far end of the hangar, where a battered Carthid shield projector sat inert. "We tested it on a captured node. Took us 15 strikes, 15 perfectly timed hits, and it cracked like an egg." The murmurs turned to excited whispers. Hope flickered in tired eyes. For the first time, the Carthid shields didn't feel invincible. "Now we scale up," Marcus continued. "Teams of strike units, equipped with these hammers, will target the shield projectors in Carthid outposts. Small teams, low-tech, low-profile. While the big guns keep them distracted, we'll break their walls from the ground up." Torres smirked, shaking her head. "You're insane, Hale." "Insane enough to win," Marcus shot back. "The Carthid think we're primitive, that we're too weak and simple to fight back. Let's show them what simple tools in the right hands can do." The first strike team moved at dawn. Marcus led the squad himself, his hammer strapped across his back as they approached a Carthid forward base shrouded in shimmering energy. The shield rippled softly, its faint hum vibrating through the air. "Remember," Marcus whispered over comms, "stick to the timing. Frequency strike, 3-second intervals. On my mark." The team crept toward the shield's projector, a humming node embedded in the ground. Marcus crouched beside it, feeling the vibration resonate through his fingers. He exhaled slowly. "Ready?" he muttered. The squad gripped their hammers. "Strike!" Marcus swung first. The hammer connected with the node in a crushing arc, sending a shockwave through the shield. The barrier rippled violently, and a low, unsteady whine filled the air. Again, the squad fell into rhythm. Strike after strike, hammers crashing down in synchronized precision. The shield flickered, the hum wavering, cracks of energy splitting through the dome. "Hold steady," Marcus shouted, sweat pouring down his face. With one final strike, the projector shattered. The shield imploded with a deafening snap, collapsing in a cascade of sparks. The Carthid outpost, exposed and vulnerable, erupted into chaos. For the first time, a human team had shattered the strongest shield. "Looks like the wall came down," Marcus muttered, gripping his hammer tightly as his team advanced. "Time to show them we're not so weak after all." The Carthage fleet hung above Earth like an iron fist, their strongest shield shimmering in orbit. A final, defiant wall between humanity and victory. Across the battered planet, stories spread of Marcus Hale and his strike teams dismantling Carthage ground shields with brute force precision. It was a small hope, but hope nonetheless. In a darkened war room beneath Earth's last stronghold, Marcus stood before a holographic projection of the Carthage flagship, its massive shield glowing like a sun in the void. Generals and scientists murmured nervously behind him, but Marcus didn't hear them. He was studying the shield, the way it pulsed, the familiar vibration that now taunted him like a puzzle begging to be solved. "Sergeant Hale," General Vance said, breaking the silence. "The orbital shield is larger than anything we've seen. You're sure this plan will work?" Marcus turned, his jaw set. The bigger the shield, the bigger the resonant disruption. "If we hit it right, it'll fall just like the rest." "But you're proposing a kinetic hammer? Launched from orbit?" Vance asked skeptically. Marcus nodded. "We scaled up the strike team's method. The Carthage shields work on vibration. Hit their core with enough force at the weak frequency, and it'll destabilize. We're building a battering ram, General. A tungsten hammer the size of a bus, fired from low orbit straight into their shield's heart." The room fell silent. A hammer, humanity's final weapon, was a glorified blunt instrument. And yet no one laughed. "Who's piloting the delivery craft?" Torres asked quietly. Marcus slung his titanium hammer over his shoulder and smiled faintly. "Who do you think?" Hours later, Marcus sat strapped into a single-pilot assault shuttle, the cockpit trembling as the engines roared to life. Behind him, the hammer, a colossal tungsten projectile reinforced with frequency modulators, sat locked in place. The launch window was small, and if the strike missed, there wouldn't be a second chance. "Control, this is Hale," he said over comms. "Systems green. Ready for launch." "Copy that, Hale," Torres' voice crackled back. "You're clear to go." "Good luck, Hammerman." Marcus grinned. "Luck's for people without hammers." The shuttle burst from Earth's surface, streaking through the atmosphere like a spear of fire. Marcus gripped the controls, watching the Carthage flagship grow larger on his display. The strongest shield pulsed like a heartbeat. Steady, perfect, arrogant. Approaching strike zone, he muttered. The shield flared as the Carthage finally noticed him. Warning sirens screamed in his headset as energy blasts flew past the shuttle, missing by meters. Marcus gritted his teeth, adjusting course. Just a little closer. The shield's frequency monitor lit up. Marcus' hammer was locked on target. "Delivery in 3, 2, 1. He slammed the release. The massive tungsten hammer detached, hurtling through the void like a meteor. It struck the shield at precisely the calculated frequency. The impact was deafening. The shield screamed, a sound that reverberated through space, an unearthly vibration that sent ripples across its perfect surface. For a moment it held, the Carthage technology refusing to give in. Then it shattered. The strongest shield, the pride of the Carthage Empire, exploded outward in a cascade of light and energy. The flagship's hull groaned under the shockwave, Carthage systems faltering, their arrogance torn apart. Marcus whooped in triumph, his shuttle skimming through the debris as the Carthage fleet descended into chaos. Across Earth's skies, humans watched as their greatest enemy's strongest defense fell. Back at mission control, Torres stared at the collapsing shield in awe. He did it. On board the shuttle, Marcus leaned back in his seat, exhaustion overtaking him. He glanced at the titanium hammer strapped beside him, grinning. Looks like the big guy met a hammer after all. The Carthage retreated within days, their fleet crippled and their morale shattered. Earth stood scarred but victorious. In the weeks that followed, stories of Marcus Hale spread across every nation. They called him the man with the hammer, a symbol of humanity's stubborn resolve. In the end, the Carthage learned a truth Marcus had always known. No wall, no shield, no empire is truly invincible. All it takes is the right force in the right hands at the right moment. And sometimes all you need is a hammer.